No, Human Rights Day. Now, as Uganda and the world commemorate this special International Human Rights Day 2024, USAID, Uganda Women's Network, East West Management Institute, and Dan Church Aid Uganda have presented this dialogue on equality under the theme, Reducing Inequality, Advancing Women's and Human Rights, a Citizen Role and Responsibility. To be part of the conversation, you're going to go to our social media platforms, that is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and use the hashtag Women in Leadership. Share your experience. Tell us some of the questions that you have towards human rights and understanding how those are upheld. Well, I have a very wonderful panel in studio, and I'll start on my immediate left, who is Perry Aritua, the Executive Director, Women's Democracy Network, Uganda Chapter. Perry,
thank you.
It's wonderful to have you today.
Yeah,
you have
nice.
such a very unique name.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having us on the show.
Thank you for coming. Just tell us about Uganda Chapter. What do you do? What's your mandate?
We're a women's rights organization, and we majorly focus on enhancing women's leadership,
Okay.
especially women politicians, those who are aspiring, and also when they get into office, we provide skills and knowledge for them to be effective while they're there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And next to her is Miss Susan Achen, the Program Coordinator, Women's Rights and Access to Justice under Uganda Women's Network. Miss Susan, wonderful to have you today.
Thank you very much.
Please tell us a little bit of Uganda Women's Network, what you do, what's your mandate?
Uganda Women's Network is an organization that aims to contribute towards the achievement of gender equality and women's empowerment, and we address that through addressing inequality in society that holds women and girls back from achieving their full potential, but also participating to their optimum capacity in the country.
Well, wonderful. Miss Angela Nakafero, Commissioner, Gender and Women's Affairs, Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. It's good to see you.
Nice to see
I
you.
think we're of the same clan.
Oh.
I'm a Segawa.
Okay.
And we of the same monkey clan?
Yes,
I'm
please.
guessing so.
So you're my brother.
Yes.
Glad to meet you.
Glad to meet you
Thank
too.
you for hosting us.
Wonderful. So tell us about your mandate at the ministry.
My mandate, I serve as the Commissioner, Gender and Women Affairs, Ministry of Gender, Labor, Social Development. I'm primarily in charge of ensuring that Uganda, we accelerate the delivery of gender equality and women's empowerment.
Indeed.
Including equality in leadership.
In leadership. That's very important.
Yeah.
And on the far right, far left, is Rahom Maria Bukira, the Program Manager, Women's Pro Bono Initiative, and a lawyer. Nice to meet you. Should I call you counsel?
Yes,
Your worship?
Council is fine.
Indeed.
Yes,
It's good to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and good evening to our listeners.
Yeah.
Yes, I work with the Women's Pro Bono Initiative. We are a women's rights organization that advances access to justice for women and girls. We have a legal aid clinic where we handle cases on women's rights issues ranging from land, domestic violence, children's rights, all those we help women at for pro bono. We also do community engagements where we do awareness, empower women holistically at various issues concerning them knowing their rights, and we also engage with the network. We're a member of the Uganda Women's Network, so we engage as sisters as we together advance women's rights.
All right.
Yes.
Well, after that introduction, I can only say that we are going to kickstart our conversation under the theme, Reducing Inequality, Advancing Women's and Human Rights, a Citizen Role and Responsibility. A reminder for you who's watching us at home, you can be part of the conversation. Go to our social media platforms and use the hashtag Women in Leadership. Share your experiences, your knowledge, and your questions will be answered right here. And to kickstart the conversation, I'll come to you, Perry. It's only fair to start with the question, what are human rights? Because sometimes we assume that people know and they really don't know.
Yeah.
What are human rights?
These are just basic entitlements that a human being has because they are human. That when you're born, you are entitled to basic entitlements: health, education, the right to speak, you know, the right to engage with people whom you feel you want to associate with, the right to food. And you see, we are the only creation, I think, who is entitled to those rights at that level. Of course, I'm not saying animals don't have rights, but for human beings, because of who we are, when you're born, they're just basic entitlements that you should have because you're human. Being treated fairly, you know, your dignity being respected, ensuring that you can be able to work, you know, and also get equal pay. You know, there are places where they will pay certain genders more than others because they are either male, you know, so it's unfair. Basically, what human rights is saying, let's be fair, let's be just. Don't treat someone differently because they were born a girl or they were born a boy, because we don't choose who we are. You know, we find ourselves on this earth. So we should be entitled to equal opportunities, the right to education for children. There should be no discrimination because you were born a boy. I should have the same opportunities like you so that I'm able to attain my full potential. So basically, that's my basic understanding of human rights.
Well, Susan, why is it important to celebrate human rights? Today, December 10th, is an International Human Rights Day. Why do we even commemorate such a day?
It's very important to set aside a day to focus specifically on human rights.
Yes.
Because of the amount of abuse, the amount of discrimination, the amount of inequality, and therefore the amount of need and lack and suffering that people go through. All of that comes from an abuse of human rights. And if we do not take the time to put everything into context, then we think that rights are being enjoyed equally or are being accessed the same way as everybody does. But as Perry has just said, there is discrimination, there's inequality formed because there are different categories of people in any society, and society will treat people differently. We have divides, first of all, along gender, which I think is the biggest divide that we see. But we also have divides along disability, we have divides along economic status, education status. And if we don't take the time to think about how entitlements of people are being provided, then we leave some people behind. Many times we think that because, for example, we have UPE, we have USE, that everybody is accessing education. But what happens to persons with disabilities? Those who have a physical disability cannot even access a point, you know, an education center. Those that cannot see or hear, even if they got to that school, are they accessing the education? And then you need to think about the conditions under which that education is being provided. Now, all of that affects the quality of human rights and the access of it. That is why that day is set apart to speak about human rights, but also, very importantly, to underpin, to highlight the fact that discrimination and inequality is what affects human rights.
Angela.
Yes, please.
Perry and Susan have kind of mentioned that there is that innate inequality and discrimination that goes on towards human rights. It either be based on gender, can be based on tribe, can be based on several social classes. What is the status quo in Uganda today towards identifying inequality? Are human rights respected? Are they not? What's the status quo today?
Thank you very much. As a country, we've adopted a number of instruments, international instruments and regional instruments on human rights, and some of these have been domesticated. The Constitution, the Uganda Constitution 1995, and the amendments that have been coming with time, is a true testament that human rights in Uganda are defined, are protected, and are promoted. You asked me a very important question: are human rights being protected and promoted? I would want to say yes, because in addition to having the legal and policy framework, enabling legal and policy framework, government has gone ahead to establish institutions that are supposed to deliver different human rights. For instance, the right to education, we have an entire system, education and training system, specifically delivering the right to education and training. I would want to bias myself. Before, women and girls were not equitably accessing the right to education. Today, they are milestones we celebrate as a country. Primary education, we've achieved gender parity in terms of enrollment. I know there are issues around retention of girls, and even boys are also dropping out even before they complete primary 7. And the same trend continues. We've done well in terms of access to higher education. Today, 47% of all students enrolled, 47% are females. By the time our affirmative action was adopted in our year, 1991, now you can gauge how old am I. The numbers of girls in higher institutions of learning were very, very few. So for me, when I see and I look at the statistics where we have 47%, for me it's a point of celebration. Of course, we are not blind to the inequalities existing. Majority of these girls are in humanities and social sciences. So time has come. We need to reflect on our affirmative action of 1.5 and decide whether we now shift to science-based areas of fields, or we maintain even in humanities but consider an addition in terms of access to science. Come to the right to health. We have an entire system of the health facilities delivering access to maternal health, access to infant health, access to sexual reproductive health, so across range of services. Of recent, Ministry of Health is trying to prioritize mental health. So yes, we've done relatively well. When it comes to women's right to participate in leadership, as a country we stand out, especially in politics. Cabinet majority, we have a very good number of women members of ministers. Business is an area, right to economic rights. That's an area where we are struggling as a country. Of course, looking at very few indicators like right to land, right to own land, we are still struggling. Right to open a business and manage a business. There are quite a number of women who are able to start their business, but making that business thrive for over 5 years and grow in size and productivity, that is still a very big challenge. But in spite of those challenges, government is also coming up to bring in special programs to ensure that also women in Uganda are able to enjoy their economic rights. Talk about PDM, Parish Development Model, women have affirmative action. Talk about Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, specifically for women, fully funded by Government of Uganda. Of recent, we are discussing and implementing the GROW project, specifically targeting women in business. Previously, the issue was lack of credit, lack of financial services, limited skills, lack of services and infrastructure. The GROW project is coming in to address some of the issues and challenges that have been standing in the way for women economic empowerment. We've not achieved a lot, but there's progress that we celebrate as a country.
Maria, yes. Angela has put it the right way, that we are still on a journey to achieve equality. Therefore, there is still some inequality that is still happening, especially to women. And she has sort of like mentioned a few here and there. In your experience, what are some of the inequalities that women as a gender are facing towards having their rights respected?
Okay, thank you. Since we're still in the 16 days of activism against GBV, I'll start with that point of the gender-based violence, the violence that happens against women. It's mainly perpetrated towards women. The disproportionate effect is mainly towards women. And so that is something that hinders women's participation in public spaces. It also hinders women's participation in leadership, women's participation in the economy, because of the violence that's meted towards them just because of their gender. They are not able to participate in these spaces freely without fear of violence. There is actually now even a new trend of online gender-based violence, where there is attacks towards women. Even women human rights defenders are being targeted. And you'll see that the attacks that are meted towards women human rights defenders are gendered. While a human rights defender who is a male mate gets certain threats, there are certain threats that women human rights defenders get. Rape threats, threats towards their sex, threats where they are being, there is the use of AI to crop pictures, sexual violence, to depict them in a certain way, all that kind of harassment towards women. So that is one of the things that's affecting their participation, but also it's a form of inequality. The other thing that is affecting women and perpetrating inequalities is access to resources. The Commissioner mentioned it, especially the issue that comes to land, owning property. And this inequality is rooted in the fact that we are in a patriarchal society, a society where most people have the mindset that men are more human beings than women. When you talk about human rights, it's supposed to be something that someone is entitled to by virtue that they are a human being. But you have instances where a woman's voice is not heard by the fact that she's a girl. When a girl is born, in some cultures, they consider her sugar, kasukari. And then in some other cultures, when a male is born, he's an heir. So you'll see even in terms of investment, it's the boys that are preferred to be taken to school. So that in a way affects them in decision making, that because someone has been able to go through an education system, you will see that the way that they make decisions in terms of resources, the resources that are available to them, inheritance, you'll see that there's what? There's some disproportionate favor towards men, what we call male privilege. Yes, we have a good legal framework, the Commissioner has mentioned, but the implementation of that framework is also another issue. We have systemic discrimination. That's the discrimination that is seen through institutions, through systems, that you'll see even the way that a system is made. It's made in a way that women are, they go through the cracks. Yeah. If you're talking about going through the justice system, how are women's voices heard in terms of reporting cases? Are they supported? That if a woman goes to a desk to report a sexual violence offense, she won't be re-victimized, asked, what were you wearing? And also, if you look at the police crime report, you'll see that about 17,000 cases of SGBV were reported. And these cases, majority of them were women. But when you look at the prosecution rate, throughout the journey of the criminal justice system, somehow the women fall through the cracks. And you see this inequality continues because for a long time, women have been silenced. So when they reach a point to go through the justice system, to be able to speak up for themselves, as a lawyer, you have instances when the client says, I will not go through with this case because they are being silenced by the family. We have seen trends in the newspapers of cases where when a woman comes up to report a case, she's being silenced by the family, she's being silenced by society. How can a woman speak about this issue? That's all a form of inequality that happens towards women, because as society we have not understood that we are all equal as human beings. God created us equally, so we're supposed to respect each other. So there's a bit of that mindset that affects delivery of services, it affects access to education, access to resources, the criminal justice system, even us in the legal field that is male-dominated, how I walk into a police station vis-a-vis how my male colleague walks in. He might be addressed as counsel and me, I might be addressed as young lady. You see, there is that mindset that it is only a man who can stand up in court and be able to speak issues, and a woman, she's supposed to be doing care work. So all these inequalities, there's a lot that can be spoken about, but the underlying thing is that there's intersectional injustices, that it spreads through different aspects of life. That as a woman, I might be educated, I'm a lawyer, but I might face some form of systemic discrimination, that because I am female, my views may not be taken. Or because I am female, they may say, no, you should not go to school, you should remain behind, because either way, you're going to be married off. Or you should not inherit property, because once they marry you, you'll be belonging to another clan, so we should not waste our resources on you. So all of that goes back to the same issue of the society we're in, the patriarchal context that we're in, that sees women as less.
I think it's quite important to always listen and understand someone else's perspective of how they're experiencing life and how generally society affects them as a person. And on that instance, I want to go a little bit personal, and if you feel free to share, you could. If you don't, it's okay. Perry, have you personally faced inequality in work, place of work, or anywhere in society?
Of course. But you see, the difference is when you are educated, your inequality may be a little bit different. When you have access to resources, your inequality may be different, because if you deny me land, I will buy it. I will not wait to inherit my father's land or my mother's land. I will buy my own land because I got an opportunity to go to school, get maybe get a job, start a business, and earn money. And you see, that's why this conversation about addressing the underlying causes of inequality becomes very important, and also understanding that our differences in terms of status, in terms of education, determines the type of inequality that one gets. What I must say is that for me personally, you have to be as good, even much better than your male colleague.
You have to be twice as good.
Exactly, because society has already put you in a box. So you have to prove otherwise. And that's why you'll find, for instance, for women in the public space, when you speak well, when you are assertive, people start calling you an iron woman. Why? These are normal things. I mean, one of the things that a public figure does is to speak. So when you speak well, when you assert yourself, because society thinks those attributes are for men, then they start giving you labels. But I think for me the advantage I had was that my parents didn't discriminate in terms of education. You know, it was like, here's the fees, go to school, may the best person win. You know, so it was
go do your best.
Exactly. But part of that was because they were also educated, both my mom and dad, so they understood the value of education. And for me, that's why education is a game changer for especially girls, because it opens opportunities that girls who don't finish school may not get. Girls who get married off at a tender age, you know, they are not able to get skills, get knowledge that makes them survive in this world. And then you'll also realize that even when you look at the statistics of poverty, the girls who don't go to school are more poor than the girls who have had an opportunity. So for me, the family plays a very big role in terms of determining where we go as human beings. And that's why the value system of the family, the nurturing of children, providing equal opportunities starts with the family. And as we continue to discuss the role of the citizen, I think the focus on the family is very important, because that
key.
is where we learn what discrimination looks like. There are families which are not like mine, where we had an equal opportunity to go to school, you know. So you'll find for such a family, the girls will either be married off early, the opportunities are reduced. They can't buy land like Perry because they didn't have an opportunity to get into gainful employment or start a business because they are denied that opportunity. But where I see, and now apart from Perry, where I see inequality, especially in our society, which has not been mentioned, is in the political sphere. Even when we have the numbers, you know, there are certain positions where, like for instance, chairperson of the districts, out of the 146, there are only 5 women. City mayors, out of the 10, there's only 1. And for me, the question is why? It's because there are certain positions, even where the laws say it is an open seat, society still says go to your position as a woman. So educating ourselves as citizens is very critical, because that's what then makes you start speaking. Yeah. It enables you to look at inequality and understand it. If you don't educate yourself, you think things are normal, or you start saying, oh, women have arrived. You know, I've been to spaces where they say, what are you saying, Perry? You women are even now more prosperous than the men. And it's not true. You know, you look at the economy, you look at access to higher education, for instance. There are still more men, and unfortunately for the men, they're into the sciences, technology, and mathematics. This is where the money is. The commissioner mentioned it. So we need to be able to have correct data to be able to make the right interventions. And maybe just to conclude is that apart from educating ourselves, we need to be able to speak up for others who are less fortunate than us. And that's why
the voice.
Exactly. That's why we do this work. You know, at times people say, but you're a lawyer, go and establish a firm and earn money. You know, and it's not all about that. What about those who can speak for themselves? So it is our duty as citizens, because anytime you have inequality, the country's development lags behind. Yeah. You have fewer people at school who have skills, you'll have less, you know, less money for the economy, because then where will government get revenue? Which taxes are you going to charge for people who are at school? I mean, or who are at home? True. You know, so for me, it's, apart from looking at ourselves, we need to be able to think about this country. You know, if we don't address the areas where we are not doing well, we will continue to lament. The SDGs are coming to an end in 2030. You look at maternal health, we have improved a little bit. I think they're about, is it 289 to 189 to 100,000 live deaths. The SDGs is 76. So even as we celebrate, we still have a long way to go. You know, you look at the poverty statistics, you know, we need...
And time is gone.
Yes, so the
have 6 years.
Data is very critical and accurate data. And that's why for many of us, when the U-boats withdrew its statistics, oh, many of us are, okay, so what is happening? Yeah, so that's what I think.
So it becomes tricky.
Exactly.
Susan, have you had personal experience where you felt your right as a woman was abused, or you felt there's a little bit of inequality going on? If you mind sharing.
I grew up in an equal opportunities home. Yes. My brothers and all the other boys in the home participated in care work, in, you know, chores and everything, the same way we did. Yeah. And also, we went to school, we had the same opportunities, and I think it stemmed right from my grandparents. I think I grew up in a certain bubble of not understanding inequality. Because even at school back in the day, I shared seats with the children of office attendants, of drivers, you know, of people who, of parents, children of parents who worked in the markets, but that is not possible today. Today you're not going to find any of our children possibly sitting with the child, sharing a seat with a child whose mother works in the market. So a lot has changed. About 10 years ago, I was working in an up-country, in a rural district. I was doing legal aid. I was a legal aid lawyer, and many times when we'd invite parties that had reported an issue to our office, you know, to speak about it for mediation, many times the men would come in and they would say, this young girl, no, this is not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I experienced that a lot. But my very first job is the one I talk about very commonly. I was in an office that was full of men, and they expected that after we had tea or eaten lunch, that somehow the plates and cups would get washed by me. So I would also just leave mine there. And with time, they sorted it out themselves. Yeah. Yes. Or I would pick mine and wash them and leave the rest.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I be like, do it yourself.
Yes, but I would like to pick up on what Perry said, that we need to be very aware about inequality in our society. I think we have two different worlds in Uganda. There are people that are living a life that gives them no clue about what inequality is. To the extent that when we speak about some of the things we talk about,
someone might not believe you.
No, they don't believe you. They think you are either not working hard enough, you are not taking the opportunities that are present, you are exaggerating. I've had discussions on some of my WhatsApp groups, and we are speaking about things like teenage pregnancy, child marriage, and somebody will say, but what's wrong with those girls? Why are they getting pregnant? But do you know what it means? Do you know the circumstances that surround pregnancy for a teenage girl? It is because at home, maybe she's living with an abusive father, an abusive uncle. If you look at the statistics, the Uganda Annual Police Crime Report shows that a certain number, I can't pull up for you the number now, of male perpetrators on sexual violence are uncles, are fathers, are brothers. These are people in close proximity. So you'll find this child is being abused by a close relative. And there's a strong silence, culture of silence that surrounds violence that happens in the home. Or you'll find that she's in a position where for them to get food, sometimes she's told, you see your siblings there, go out and don't come back with anything. There's nothing for them to eat. There are no there are no prizes for guessing what she's going to exchange with. If you paid attention to some of the stories that were coming up during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were many cases of girls reporting that they were exchanging their bodies just to get something to take home for food. Then there are all these people luring them with, I don't know, money, I'll pay your fees, their parents marrying them off, their parents promising them to older men, in exchange for something. So the circumstances under which inequality happens needs to be something that everybody pays attention to without their rose-colored lenses. When we sit sometimes in our comfortable offices, or you're driving the cars, we need to be mindful of what is going on in society. Otherwise, we do not participate in these conversations. And we need to, because the inequality at a certain time trickles down to everyone. It trickles down to everyone. If there is high crime, because there's a population that does not have and is fending for itself through criminal activity, it comes back to you. If we are speaking about the need to scale up services, health services, it comes back to you. Yeah, true. If you're speaking about the education system, it comes back to you. Because we're speaking about the human capital of the country. And if we cannot raise that human capital, then as a country, we are not going to make much progress. Yeah.
Well, if you have just joined us, we are having a special dialogue on reducing inequality, advancing women's human rights, and that which is a citizen role and responsibility for you who is watching at home. And you can be part of this conversation. Go to our social media platforms, that is on X, Facebook, YouTube, and use the hashtag Women in Leadership. Share your experience, ask a question, or just share a little bit of knowledge that probably you know or someone else might learn from you. And I'll come to you, Angela. What is being done to bridge this gap, this inequality gap that we have in the country, in Uganda? What is being done?
Thank you very much. A lot is going on. I talked about the laws and policies.
Yes.
That's one way of reducing and addressing the existing inequalities, having affirmative action for women in Uganda in leadership alone has helped us to increase the number of women in leadership positions at all levels, at different levels, be it local government. The number of women in local government as councillors has improved significantly. It's only the position of the chairperson where we have not done well. When it comes to public service, at the top level, we have the permanent secretaries. We have more female permanent secretaries in Uganda compared to male permanent secretaries. But largely within the public service in totality, you'll find that women constitute 27.5%. The number is still low if we go by the national standards that are being defined. Talk about politics, members of parliament, ministers, we've done relatively well. I've already talked about this. So put aside the laws and policies, there are special programs. I've talked about some of these.
In a way, I was trying to figure out, because when you hear the stories that Perry and Susan have shared, we see that we are on a journey, but it's a long way, way to where we need to be.
Still a long way to go.
Like, what are those extra things that can be done in addition to what is already being done? Yes.
All of us, we need to go back and strengthen the family as a unit of national development. Perry has already talked about it. Once we have stronger families where the mother and father are already sensitized on the importance of equality between boys and girls, that provides a very strong foundation. Because in Uganda, parents have a big role they play in terms of access to services for their daughters and sons. If the parents are really progressive, they will not allow their girl to get out of school. Even when she becomes pregnant, they will definitely find ways of changing the school and ensuring that this particular girl is supported to look after her baby, the parents, in fact, to look after the babies, and then provide an opportunity for this girl to continue, including further training to ensure that she becomes competitive within the market, labor market. So the family is really very critical in terms of setting the foundation. So if you have a stronger foundation, coupled with enabling laws and policies and special programs, honestly, as a country, can do a lot. Within the family, we also have cultural, social norms, values and practices. If the family is equitable in terms of treatment of girls, we will not have issues of discrimination, where parents are preferring for the boy to go to school as this girl is going to produce food or look after other young children. I'm happy to come from such a family. My father was really very progressive. He would really encourage me to continue with my education. So we need, within those families, what happens within the family, if the family can ensure that this girl is fed, this boy is fed well, school fees is there, whatever they need to thrive and exploit their potential is provided, in addition to what government is providing, then it becomes very, very important. It's still within the family that we start to think about how we are socializing the boys and girls. If we can socialize our boys and girls equitably, what the boy is entitled to is also in the same way the girl is entitled to. You'll find that those families are doing better than those that are not. I want to talk about, for instance, from the GBV perspective, majority of these girls find themselves being married off before even 18 years. It's because the community where the family is does not prioritize the right to education to these girls.
To a girl.
And instead, they exploit her further and discriminate against her. Because most of the families look at the bride price, but this bride price is not enjoyed by the girl, who is going to suffer for the rest of her life. And in most cases, it's something very small. If I reflect the Buganda culture, much as it has changed, the mandatory aspects is about the father's kanzu, the father's mutwalo. No, mutwalo can be defined. the mother's gomas. And then the hen or cock. For the sengas, whatever is not mandatory.
By the way.
Is a by the way, depending on what you want. So all those things that are really very small are not taken up, are not benefiting the girl herself. No, they're benefiting other people.
She's being used as a commodity.
Exactly. In the Western Uganda, they normally bring in cattle. That cattle does not belong to this girl that is being married. The same applies to Karamoja. They bring heads, hundreds of heads of cattle. But this girl will never go with this cattle to the home where she's going to marry. So she leaves all the wealth generated because of her to other families to benefit. Meanwhile, she goes to suffer, even when she's still a young girl who is not prepared for the roles and responsibilities of starting a family. So all these practices, much as we continue to celebrate them, they're discriminatory in nature and making the women and girls more vulnerable. Because we've had instances where if you want to get away from the home where you're married, your parents are supposed to pay back. And if they are not able to pay back, then you stay there, regardless.
No matter what.
Exactly.
Angela, sorry to cut you short. So, in your opinion,
yes, please.
How far do you think, in terms of progress, how far do you think we are as a country in achieving equality?
Equality, we've made progress. As a country, our gender development index is 0.701 compared to 1. So that means that we still have another 0.3 to really make milestones on in terms of ensuring that we are equal with boys, men, and women. So we still have a long way to go. And of course, the target is 1. So there's quite a lot. And of course, not forgetting the areas where we are really lagging behind. And economic empowerment is one of the areas where we are lagging behind.
Maria, what are some of the challenges you think that organizations like yourself are facing in terms of advocating for equality under human rights for women and other marginalized groups?
Okay, thank you. So some of the challenges, I'll actually start with at least an experience I've seen as a female lawyer, young female lawyer. You've had instances where we get couples coming in for mediation, or you're following up with a domestic violence case, and we have had instances where there are some cases where you can write to the father that you're not providing child neglect, please come in for a mediation meeting. We've had instances where the fathers say that they cannot talk to a female lawyer. Or how can a women's rights organization summon me, a man?
Who are you?
Yes, we've had instances where some of those people ask to be seen by male lawyers, and we have written back, or we have told them that, you know what, we are lawyers, so if you want a male lawyer, you come with your male lawyer. Our team is experienced and they're able to address these issues. So some of the challenges we face is that we ourselves as women's rights activists, we are discriminated. You'll see some of the things that happen, that every time you spoke about women's rights activism, it's like as if society sees it that you're spoiling women, these ones who have come to spoil women. Or if you speak about even issues like you say you are feminist, they'll just say this one who is spoilt. Now, we've even seen instances, actually, for example, before I got married, when you sit and you're going to, like, let's say, handle a divorce petition and everything, if it's a male colleague, his marital status does not matter. But if you are a female lawyer, they will first ask you, are you married? Do you understand? We've been having discussions on the marriage bill, and we've been engaging other stakeholders. We've had instances when our colleagues are presenting and the question is going around, who is that girl? Is she married? But if it is a male colleague presenting, he's not asked who is that boy or is he married.
I think the accurate saying would be, who is that kagal?
Yeah.
So you'll see even within ourselves as women's rights activists, our qualifications are not sufficient. Our experience in the field is not sufficient. Society still sees you in the lens of you're supposed to be in the kitchen. Or you've seen some of us come out to condemn some issues, and they will say that, what are these women doing? Don't you have better things to do? Go in the kitchen. Yes. We've also faced challenges within I've spoken about the criminal justice system, because it's one of the majority of the cases that we get are criminal cases, especially sexual violence cases, rape, defilement. Those are the common ones. You'll see instances of threatening, not only the clients who are reporting, but also us as lawyers. Sometimes we're threatened by some of the perpetrators. The other challenge that we have is we don't have even a witness protection program as a country. We don't have laws that favor witnesses. You've seen instances where even in terms of media reporting, there are not values clarified to understand women's rights issues. You'll see a headline where a girl has been defiled, but the headline reads, young girl sleeps with the maybe this person or what, and you'll see that there's a lot of sensationalization, trivialization, and bias of these issues that are affecting the girl child. And so it will be seen that she'll be portrayed in a light that she seduced this man, and the responsibility of the perpetrator, the responsibility of the adult is taken away simply because he's a male. And so you'll have instances when you come to speak out to these issues, speak out about these issues, the community is not sensitized to understand that if anyone is in a sexual relationship and they are below the age 18, that is defilement. And at least one of the things we've been doing as WPI is to have values clarification with media. How do you report these issues? How to understand protection of girls' names. You'll see sometimes, at least it has changed, some media houses, instead of protecting the identity of the girl, she is put there, all her full names. This is a child.
Yep.
And the perpetrator somehow is given some title, he's praised. So we still have that bias. That bias against women, and while human rights activists face challenges, the space shrinks faster for us women's rights defenders, because there will be other inequalities that affect you. And some of these other things that affect us is we are friends with the government. We work with them in some instances, but we have shrinking civic space. Yeah. We have instances where there is a clog down on organizations that work on human rights issues, and this usually comes in terms of the stringent laws, the requirements that one is supposed to have to even just start doing some of this work, and then continuing to do it, the mandatory things that you have to report. They make the work so hard. So there is a whole aspect of shrinking civic space, monitoring of the work that we do, and threatening. So there are instances when the perpetrators are powerful people, especially in trafficking cases. So you will see that the work that we do is life-threatening, and the environment is not friendly. And so you have to look at us as women. There are things while you're moving late from your work to do other things, while your colleague might be worried that they're going to snatch his phone. For you, you're worried they're going to take your phone, or they may sexually violate you. So we are in such a society, and it's something that we fear for our lives. The other challenge that we have is in terms of the resources, that even there is disparity in terms of resource allocation, even partners distributing resources, heads of institution. If you go and look into some of these institutions, how they are structured, positions of leadership for women, it's something that challenges us to speak out. We saw there were instances of the nude protest. Part of the nude protesters, did you know there were male nude protesters? But the focus was on the female protesters, and some of them were being threatened at their workspaces. Or you're a women's rights activist, you come out to speak, and your family. Thankfully, I come from a supportive family that agrees with the work that I do, but there are women's rights defenders who come out to speak to these issues, and the moment they get offset, they're being called, they're asking them, why are you embarrassing us?
Maria, we are running out of time, and before I come to you, Perry, Angela, did you have something to share?
Well, for me, what I've started to experience is the fact that men are becoming scared of the gains we are making. The little gains that women have made, already men are getting scared. You get statements, these women of Uganda, these women of Museveni, they're taking over our positions. They're, you know. So and for me,
such is turning into threats.
Yeah, and of course, it's the resistance which as women of Uganda we have to prepare ourselves to respond to adequately.
Indeed.
Because it's about equality, it's about sharing power, roles and responsibility.
And communication. Perry,
exactly.
In just 1 minute, because we have run out of time, what are your recommendations to improve this status quo, this inequality, and remove it, and probably move a little bit closer to the journey where we want to be?
One is to invest in the institutions that are mandated to reduce this inequality, and one of them is the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. They get one of the least budgets in this country, and so a lot of their work then is taken over by civil society organizations. And Maria has ably painted the picture of women's rights organizations right now. The resources are quite limited. So government must be deliberate, because the protection of human rights, the first responsibility is government. That's why we pay taxes. You know, civil society just complements government. Ideally, legal aid should not even be provided by NGOs. It should be government. We don't have a legal aid law right now, you know. So government must invest
more
in
investment.
People. Then the last is accountability. We must account for gender equality.
Susan,
thank you.
In a few seconds, your recommendations.
My recommendation goes to us. Ordinary Ugandans, the wananchi. The role of reducing inequality starts with us. The double standard starts in our homes, how we socialize the children, how we treat ourselves, but also those around in the community. And as a society, I think we have become very complacent about inequality. We have normalized a lot of acts of inequality and discrimination and therefore abuse. And if we do not turn that back, if we continue to wait for commissioner or for the police, you know, to come and take action, then we are not playing our role. It remains for each of us as leaders, regardless of the fact that we may not be elected or appointed, but in whichever circle of influence that we have, we can play a leadership role to see that inequality and discrimination does not take root.
All right, Angela, in 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Really, protecting and promoting human rights is a shared responsibility. I know government has the mandate, the primary mandate, to ensure that Ugandans' rights are protected, but we need to work with government, all of us.
Maria.
And much more work starts from the family.
From the family. Maria?
Yes. My recommendation is resource allocation for this work. Also, we need to continue in creating awareness. We do not tire in raising awareness from the grassroots up through our education system, using all platforms, all stakeholders, cultural leaders, religious leaders. There are pulpits, platforms. They are a great audience where we can raise awareness and transform mindsets.
All right.
Thank you.
You so much, ladies, for the insightful conversation. And for you who has been at home watching this conversation, thank you so much. And again, if you did miss our discussion at the beginning, you can go to our website, which is www.ntv.co.ug, and you'll be able to recap the whole dialogue that we've had today. And for you who wants to continue the conversation, because again, it is important to continue this conversation, not to end it here and forget about it in the next day, go to our social media platforms, that is on Twitter, which is X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Use the hashtag Women in Leadership. Share your experience, share your knowledge, and just be part of the community that is going to better the human rights and women's rights in Uganda. And it is important. Today is International Human Rights Day, so refresh your memory, refresh your knowledge about what it means to abuse or to support your human rights. Thank you so much. I've been with Angela Nakafeda, who is the Commissioner, Gender and Women's Affairs, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Perry Aritua, Executive Director, Women's Democracy Network, Uganda Chapter, Rahom Maria Wikira, Program Manager, Women's Pro Bono Initiative, and Susan Achen, who is the Program Coordinator, Women's Rights and Access to Justice, Uganda Women.